So, I am going to demonstrate something that a lot of people might not know about in X-plane, and this relates to helicopters and what you would normally call force trimming. And a lot of people recommend that you use something called controls magnetic lock. It's a button assignment, and that does work fine for helos that don't have a stability augmentation system, automatic flight control system, digital fly-by-wire, whatever you want to call it, which in X-plane is the ART-STAB system. So R22, R44, anything that's completely raw, that button assignment will work, and so I'm not going to dissuade anyone from using that. What that does is it takes a joystick, a deflection joystick or a pressure stick, and it holds in the background in X-plane a control deflection when you tap that button. It's dumb though, and by dumb I mean it doesn't know the attitude of the helicopter in X-plane. It could, but it doesn't, because it's only trying to deflect the cyclic and keep the cyclic held. In fact, I don't think it will even show it on screen, the deflected cyclic staying there after you do that. Not that that's necessarily something that's important to you, but my point is that a lot of modern helicopters are not like that. They use SAS, AFCS, digital fly-by-wire, whatever you want to call it, and they do know the attitude of the helicopter, and what they instead use is an attitude command system where your force trimmer button is really designating an attitude. So, what I'm going to recommend for those who don't want the just dumb cyclic method, and of course if you have a long pole cyclic, you don't care about this at all, because whether you have a mechanical sort of trimmer, a mechanism that's on your physical pole cyclic, or it's fluid damped, or it's not damped at all and you just like holding it wherever it is, you don't care about this. You want it to be as raw as possible usually, and you're just going to tweak it at will in tiny little increments. That's the whole point of having a very long throw, long pole cyclic. So the pole is long and it's got a lot of throw to it, usually, not necessarily always. So you can disregard this, obviously. Force feedback stick users, I'm not totally sure. This probably is relevant to you guys. Anyway, so this is the not dumb method, and I'm not saying it's dumb to use controls magnetic lock. I'm saying that it's dumb from the standpoint that this technique, the algorithm that's being used, the code in X-plane, doesn't know and doesn't care what the helo's attitude is. Doesn't care about anything. All it cares about is the cyclic. So what I'm going to demonstrate is actually using the autopilot system. And you can turn on wings level, which is the attitude hold manual designation system, but whether you have that button assigned or not on the stick, or anywhere else for that matter, in order for this to really work, you need to have control wheel steering as a button assignment too. So I've got it on a pinky button on my stick, my pressure stick. So in order to get this to work, the default for CWS is wings level, which is attitude hold, manual designation. So I just tap the CWS button. And I'm going to also tap my two toe brakes to turn the brake off. So if you look under the right side at the bottom where it says sync roll, sync pitch, it just set that as 0 and then a slight pitch. I'm going to deactivate it again. And I'm going to move the stick a little bit. You should see it moving a little bit. Or maybe not. Whatever. So it's on. So attitude holds there. The current attitude is level-ish. The roll margin is wider. So you can bank a little bit, hit CWS, and it'll hold 0. You got to go really far to get it out of the roll. You'll be able to see it when I take off. So a little bit of collective yaw around. This is Seattle, by the way, Tacoma Airport. So I'm going to add some left cyclic, release, see how wings level. Add some right cyclic, release, wings levels, back cyclic, lower the collective a little bit, release, levels, forward, release, levels. This is the Tiger. Probably should have pointed that out. Which I heavily modded the art stab. I don't think I had any art stab at all. So this is the Comanche art stab constraints that I came up with, that I use on a lot of the helos. So it's wings leveling. And that's all well and good if you just want to keep holding the stick. Think of it as like Black Shark. When you have any of the trimmer modes either turned off or it's trimmed to level, you can always push on the stick and then release. And go back. Enemy engaged. That has a trimmer button and enemy engaged. Comanche Gold doesn't have a trimmer button, so it's always wings leveling. Now, I can hold that CWS button and it releases it and actually makes it easier to deflect and do anything I want while I'm continuing to hold the stick. But, so it's a release trim, really, is what it's acting like right now. But I can hold a bank with my stick and a little bit of push forward and release that CWS pinky button, and it's gonna hold that. I can do more. See that? So this is a sort of attitude hold system for helicopters that's not dumb anymore. It cares about the attitude of the aircraft and it will try to hold it. Now, if you're trying to use a totally raw, no computer control helo like an R22 or R44, then obviously utilizing any sort of autopiloting system, you might feel it's more than you want, too much automation. That's fine. Go back to controls, magnetic lock. Now there is another really fascinating thing that you can do, and this goes back to GlovePIE and PPJoy. Which I love to use. whether it's enemy engaged or DCS Black Shark or Comanche Gold. I might even use it for some sims like Joint Strike Fighter, which I finally got working after all these years, using White Knight in order to get it to not see my pedals, so basically block it from seeing everything except the GlovePIE. And that's also how I can get pedals to show up and work in Jane's Longbow anthology, which is fantastic to have pedals in that finally. In order to show you what I'm talking about, I'm going to land really quick, and then I'm going to turn off GlovePIE and load a completely different script. Right now it's just a totally canned, normal test script that I think it's the one I use in Joint Strike Fighter. That is simply the straight axes. It's not doing any auto trimming or anything like that. So I only have them assigned, the GlovePIE axes assigned right now, so it's easier and I don't have to go in there and reassign the axes inside Exponent. But it's as if I don't even have GlovePIE running right now. So I turn off the GlovePIE. I'm going to load an auto trimming script. This is one of the enemy engage scripts. I think it's the most recent one I've been using. But I have the roll trim range at negative 0.6 to positive 0.6 instead of like 0.45 or whatever I had lately in enemy engaged. So now I've got it on. I should also mention that the direct axis assignment on the stick right now for pitch is elevator trim. Now it doesn't matter one way or another when you're doing that CWS thing for smart attitude hold using the wings leveling system, right? You can have that even unassigned. It doesn't need elevator trim on the pitch axis. But for some reason when I do this auto trimming thing, what I'm about to show you, it does seem to help on some helos, and I don't know why, to have the elevator trim assigned directly to the stick axis, while the PPJoy GlovePIE axes are, you know, roll and pitch. So I don't know why that helps, but so if you're not going to do this auto trim thing I'm about to show you, you don't need elevator trim assigned to the direct stick axis. If you are going to do this, you need this. Also, for both the manual designation of the attitude using the autopilot that I was just showing you, and for this that I'm about to show you, and basically whenever I'm not even using autopilot or this any of the GlovePIE scripts at all in X-Plane, I almost always have that checkbox inside Planemaker for helos. It's under special equipment, auto trim pitch loads. I almost always check that. And I make sure I have the trim range for the pitch sufficiently wide and sufficiently fast responding. I highly recommend that. Now if you have a long pull cyclic and maybe even a force feedback stick, I don't know about those, but definitely if you have a long pull cyclic, you're not going to do that checkbox. That's counterintuitive. It's counterproductive. You don't need it. It's just going to make things weirder. but Austin added that for me years ago, and it's awesome, and I almost always have that on. And the attitude hold AP system for the wings level and the CWS button and this thing I'm about to show you will not work if that checkbox is not checked. Okay? And on some helos, for this thing I'm about to show you, for some reason you do need elevator trim assigned to the direct stick axis, again, in addition to the GlovePIE axes that are assigned for roll and pitch. Okay, so that out of the way, I am going to go back and designate this wings level situation, this attitude. I just tap that CWS button again. So I have wings level designated as the attitude for the autopilot to do its thing. That's what I want. Now I'm going to very gradually take off. That GlovePIE should be running right now. I think I have it running. It is. Sometimes I forget to start it. Okay, this is that auto trimming script, that modded, tweaked, enemy engaged script, negative 0.6 to positive 0.6 on the trim range, auto trim range for the roll. Now I haven't hit that CWS button again. And right now my hand's off the cyclic. I'm going to add a bank. Hands off the cyclic. It's holding the bank. So this starts to get similar to in DCS Black Shark, Comanche Gold, and Enemy Engaged, where you can set, well, in Black Shark you kind of have to either disengage the trim state. You keep the SAS channels on, but you either clear the trim or you go into settings for the cyclic and you have no available trim. There's like one of the new settings is that. And of course in Enemy Engaged by default your wings leveling, and Comanche Gold your wings leveling all the time because it doesn't even have a manual trimmer button. So I am not trimming with the hat. I have trim available on a hat. If I touch it right now it's going to disengage the autopilot. So my convex hat is trim, but I'm not using it. I haven't hit CWS to designate a new manual attitude for the autopilot. The autopilot wants to try and hold wings level, but that GlovePIE auto trimming script combined with that auto trim pitch loads in Planemaker checkbox under special equipment are combining to keep not only the pitch trimmed but also the roll. I mean, sometimes you have to add a little bit more. It might slightly wobble back a little, but that's not that different than Enemy Engaged or Black Shark when I'm doing this. But key to this is I don't have to keep my hand on the stick all the time. And I don't even have to touch a hat trimmer. I don't have to keep holding down and releasing the CWS button. I just hit the CWS button because I was talking about it and paying attention to what I was doing. Let me go back to designating fairly level state. That's the fairly level state. So this works extremely well, and I was not expecting this at all. I just was flying as I normally would in X-Plane for helos, where I use the hat trimmer a lot for roll, and the auto trim pitch loads I just hold the stick forward a little bit and it'll load the pitch trim for me gradually, and then I release, and sometimes I would add a little bit of pitch trim on the hat manually to speed it up a little bit. When I do that, and obviously the faster you go and the more collective you've got, as you change the collective, you need to keep tweaking the roll when you don't use the AP system. And then I started using alternately the AP mode for attitude hold, which is called wings level in X-Plane, and that CWS button. So sometimes I would use that, and I was, well, this is great. And then I had the thought, well, geez, if I can designate a wings level state, why can't I use GlovePIE and the auto trimmer scripts, the dynamic trim scripts, in combination with the AP if I've designated a wings level state, and have it work like enemy engaged, Comanche Gold, and Black Shark, and lo and behold, the dang thing works. And while kind of like controls magnetic lock, the GlovePIE script is dumb. It does not know the X-Plane helicopter's actual attitude. The autopilot system does, that's attempting to continue to get the helicopter back to level, but that PPJoy virtual joystick is attempting to push past that wings level state to an amount of attitude that I am organically, continuously tweaking as I intuitively adjust this virtual cyclic, that the PPJoy virtual cyclic that's in the background. So this works really well. And I don't have to hit a CWS button, keep holding a CWS button every time I maneuver, and then release it to hold an attitude. Don't have to mess with a hat. I mean, those are nice ways of using it, but especially with a pressure stick, it feels a little weird having to deflect and hold a button and then release it at just the right moment with just the right amount of pressure. And in some ways this is a lot better behaved than even Black Shark with the GlovePIE auto trimming script. So it's a lot less squirrely stability augmentation system and autopiloting system in X-Plane. And of course it's got a better yaw damper than DCS has. But right now I've got both X-Plane's yaw damper and the Tiger's on yaw damper that'll engage. The Tiger's yaw damper will engage if I go slow enough. Right now at the moment it's just the X-Plane yaw damper. The Tiger's yaw damper is kind of aggressive, and you have to pump the pedals sometimes, or at least not push the pedal all the way in. I've been complaining a lot and trying to find ways of mitigating enemy engage its coaxial rotors, especially with flight model 0, as we call it, on the KA-52, the Hokum B. I think that's the NATO designation for it. But interestingly, in X-Plane 11, the old Black Shark coaxials got a ridiculous amount of pedal authority, and you do have to be like at half or less authority. And you can do that either in X-Plane's joystick calibration, well, not calibration, but it's like your adjustment where you can go in there and change the available range and the dead zone. You can either do it there, or I can do it in the GlovePIE script. I mean, this enemy engage script right now, if I had the... Yeah, it actually is the... You can see I have it set to half. The rotary on the throttle that controls the divider for the yaw in the GlovePIE script. I must have the yaw axis on the GlovePIE script assigned right now. Yeah, so I've got the rotary on the throttle in the middle, and you see it's only half available yaw, and I pulled it all the way back, and now it's full available yaw. This becomes really useful in some of the coaxials in Exponent because they have such a huge amount now, for some reason, maybe it's realistic, of yaw. A lot of yaw dampers do that though. They will attenuate the available yaw that you can get. And this is 1/3 now. Okay. I've got the pedal all the way pushed, and you can see on the bottom right in the control deflections on the screen, it's about 1/3. So if I load up the Black Shark for you, I can show that. And you can bump the rotors extremely easy. You have a little bit of collective, and you do some crazy stuff with your cyclic, or not cyclic, excuse me, with the pedals. If you do crazy stuff with the pedals, and you have any amount of collective, you can bump your rotors in Exponent. So I'll just do that. I'll load up the one of the modded KA50s that I have. Someone else did this helo, and I added hard stab constraints, and I tweaked a bunch of parameters for the rotors, and it's a loud helicopter. Loud sample they're using. So the cockpit, the 3D cockpit in this one actually needs some fixing. So it doesn't show the panel anymore. I'll just go to the HUD to increase my frame rate. So turn on the CWS thing. Pretty level designated attitude. I've got that little rotary in the middle, so it's dividing it by half available yaw. I can actually show you bumping the rotor. It may have already done it. Yeah, it already done it. Did it. I already tore off one of the rotors by pushing it really hard. Let me do it so you can see it do that. Don't tilt over. Yeah, see, you just tore it off the rotor. Even at half yaw, it's still capable of doing it. You just have to be gentle. At 1/3 yaw, it's really hard to make it happen, but then you lose out on some of that useful available yaw. So, hit CWS. Now I'm not going to hit CWS again, I'm just going to leave it. It's just me on the stick, and collective, and pedals, no hat trim, no CWS, AP force trimmer button. It's not even on anything. This flies at least as well as Black Shark using GlovePIE. So when I'm flying DCS Black Shark with GlovePIE, it doesn't fly any better than this. And in the yaw, I would say this probably is better because DCS's yaw damper is kind of goofy. You don't have enough yaw authority, period, in DCS. So it could learn something. DCS could learn something on its coaxial helo from, surprisingly, enemy engaged, and especially X-plane. And while I'd say X-plane and enemy engaged have too much, DCS does not have enough available yaw, and it doesn't dampen it fast enough. It's like hardly any authority unless you turn on turn to target, or you have flight director off and manually designate headings by toggling the yaw channel on the SAS. I think you can also now optionally have your force trimmer button also designate a new heading when flight director is off in DCS Black Shark, but that's, I think, really kind of weird. Anyone who is using the force trim button a lot, like you're flying just in general with that, I guess you might want that, considering how really weak the yaw damper is in flight director. I'm pretty sure the flight director term isn't even like the right term for them to be using. I believe it's a mistranslation of some sort. Yeah, this is awesome. You gotta be kind of gentle when you have, what is it, damage control surfaces from over G checked in the X-plane settings. Some of the older helos, like I think this is an X-plane version 8 helo, and even the newer Gazelle is really sensitive. So you gotta be super gentle. See if I can do a rolling landing. Gentle. And you can definitely get into a VRS if you try and decelerate too rapidly. Especially if the wind is at your back. You can see the VRS constraints, or I guess it would be VRS thresholds on the right side. It says VRS 1, that's the main rotor. VRS 2 is your tail rotor, which can lead to loss of tail rotor effectiveness if you get VRS 2 to do something weird. Let's see, what else can I show you before I close this out? Probably, well, I was talking about the Gazelle, I might as well show you that. This one is pretty great with this scheme. Boy, is that a lot quieter. Barely hear it now. You might not have even been able to hear me over the Black Shark rotor before. I hope you could hear me when I was talking before. So I'm going to tap CWS. Oh, did I just tip the helo? Is the tail rotor still running? Seems to be still running. I have the head shake plugin, which is right here. You can see my settings. It only works in 3D cockpit mode. Doesn't work in HUD mode, doesn't work in 2D mode. Like this is 2D mode. I can't scroll around. I can shift perspectives in discrete chunks, but not continuously. So once I'm in this continuous 3D mode, you see the shaking. I really like this Gazelle with this control scheme. Particularly good for precision landings on an oil platform, like that big oil platform. Super nice. What makes me laugh is people saying X-Plane 11 is sometimes like aircraft fly like they're on rails. It's like, what are you talking about? Try that Black Shark. I mean, TCS does a pretty not on rails interpretation of a coaxial helicopter. I mean, you drift around like crazy. There's less being on rails in X-Plane than any sim I have ever used. So people, please stop saying that. If you're saying that, oh, planes fly like they're on rails in X-Plane, you need to re-examine your definition of what that even means. And other than things like available control deflections and over G tolerances and VRS thresholds, aircraft in X-Plane do not have flight models. The flight model is generated by X-Plane in real time. You do not program the flight model. It's not a table flight model like Microsoft Flight Simulator. And even the new one, it does not derive flight performance in real time in 2020. Oh, it's kind of blade elements. No, it's not. It's not blade element theory. Even the actual European programmers admit Flight Simulator 2020 is not blade element theory. It doesn't even attempt to be. It's just a more complicated type of table model. You can make your own aircraft in Planemaker and then see how it would fly. I mean, it's not exact, but much of the deviation is going to be based on how specific and how well you make that Planemaker flight model. So a Huey in X-Plane, it's your particular Huey, right? I mean, there's like 3 or 4 different Hueys, I think, in X-Plane. I've got 2 of them downloaded. So that's, you know, Bob's X-Plane Huey. It's not the actual Huey from Bell. This thing with the very mild, this Gazelle with a very mild arc stab. It's not super aggressive arc stab or yaw damping. It's just mild that they added, and between that and the AP wings leveling and the GlovePIE auto trim script, it is just, it's got nuance, which is probably more than you would have if, say, the GlovePIE was communicating with X-plane and getting the attitude of the helicopter. I mean, there might be some people with sort of XFCS type digital fly-by-wire plugins for helicopters. I don't know, there might be one. But anyone that makes a plugin for digital fly-by-wire for helos and X-plane is probably going to want the plugin to communicate with X-plane and go back and forth, get information on the attitude of the helicopter. And in some ways, having X-plane's autopilot just doing that attempt at stabilizing to level is enough. And then the organic aspect of you sort of dynamically adjusting that PPJoy virtual cyclic and the GlovePIE script doing a kind of auto trimming of that virtual cyclic. You get the best of both worlds. You get a kind of rate command attitude hold, but it's not perfect, it's not omnipotent, it doesn't actually know the X-plane helicopter's real attitude, but you get an auto trimming and it's still got a ton of nuance, and you still have to, you know, babysit it, and it's fun to fly. If it was a true AFCS plugin for helicopters, it might be kind of too simplistic. As much as I like Longbow 2, sometimes it seems like that's a little too omnipotent, you know? I love Longbow 2's fly model, don't get me wrong, but there's more nuance in X-plane when you do this, I gotta say. I might as well show you the Apache and the Comanche while I'm doing this. The Apache still needs to be further tweaked to fix excessive lift. It's always had excessive lift, even since version 8. The modded version of someone else's Apache Longbow, which I call Enhanced Apache, which I guess was an early version of the Block 5 Apaches, or Block 4 or whatever it was. Ones that had all the AFCS stuff on it. Well, it's always had a little too much lift. So I still need to figure out what's going on with that. So right here I say block 3, I guess. Alright. There are several problems. Yes, there are several problems with this one, because it's a version 8 helo that I simply keep resaving in a newer version of X-plane. It's extraordinary that it even still works as well as it does. Let's just leave it at that. Like the Hughes 500 that I tweaked a little bit with some arc stab and yaw damping. That one has a static rotor. Its rotor plugin doesn't work anymore. And it does have a HUD, but it's only in 2D mode, so when I have that on, you're not going to have any shake. So again, this has a lot of lift on the main rotor, so you have to be super gentle. Oh, did I designate the wings level? I don't think I did. I can do that now. Just looking over at the right side. A little high on the... a little low on the pitch, actually. Okay, that's pretty good. Now that I got that, my hand is off. I don't think I quite added enough forward pitch. Now hands off. Oh, you're gonna hit those wires. I don't even think you can hit them in X-Plane. Everything is sort of transparent. Trees, buildings. I mean, the ground isn't. You can't fly through the ground, but for the runway. Or water. Or an oil rig. I think some of the cranes on the oil rigs you can, but not the landing pads. And apparently that has something to do with the amount of CPU cycles it would take to calculate all those potential impact points. So they just leave them out. Way better than any Apache in FSX. I mean, I think one or two of them that I downloaded and their Comanche and FSX were not good. And next I'll show you the Comanche, and there's a lot of stuff I gotta fix for this. I think in X-Plane 10 it started to get kind of funky. There were some issues with it. And now in 11, some of the versions of the Comanche won't even open. It'll crash X-Plane. And so I have to delete all the textures and delete the cockpit from it. And so let's call it the Silver Surfer Comanche because it's, you know, silver. I am a little concerned with the joystick dead zones. I guess they're okay. So the one I think I got working in X-Plane 11, the version of Comanche, was what I call raw. So it's got no cockpit object, no textures. I think this is the version. And some of the weapons are in the wrong spot, like the missiles are a foot or two forward or back from where they were, so I need to fix that. Hopefully this doesn't crash. Several minor problems. Yeah, all that beautiful cockpit, that's gone. So tap the CWS button. I'm going to run into that building. I'll go right through it magically. If I do. Some of the buildings are already useful, like the carports for practicing hovers. Because you got all these different levels, you got cars all over the place. Like this. Is that a, no, it's not. Is that a carport? That is a carport. So, passing through objects, it has its benefits. And to spin around faster, you can always disable yaw damp and then re-enable it. Disable it, spin around, re-enable it. This does not feel simplistic. I mean, it probably looks kind of simplistic, but it feels extremely nuanced, and you are at all times flying it. I should mention that on the Gazelle, I believe it's one of the screens that has to do with helo related stuff in Planemaker, and I changed it further so that there's like 15 degrees of tail rotor with max collective, and then 15 degrees, I don't know if it's negative, it's in the opposite direction. And that is added from 50 knots all the way up to 150 knots. So before I go, I will look in Planemaker and tell you what I changed that to. I probably need to do something like that for the Comanche as well, because I believe that is a fairly new, I don't think they had that in X-Plane 8. Back when I first did the tweaks on the Apache and the Comanche. So what that does is as you get faster, that yaw moment you'll get, you can kind of tune that out slightly, and you can do a little bit of tail mixing based on collective setting. So that at least made the Gazelle quite a bit nicer in the yaw, especially with yaw damping on, which only has so much authority. I think the available yaw damping authority is pretty substantial for the Comanche I have set up. Probably one of the more aggressive yaw dampers. I will go into Planemaker and look before I stop this video and tell you the settings I put on it. I can actually show you the art stab constraints for this one. Right here. So the Tiger, I think I just took these that I arrived at for the Comanche and put them into the Tiger, and they worked well. And then I did that special controls checkbox in Planemaker for auto trim pitch loads, and which I do on almost all the halos I fly. Again, if you have a long pull cyclic, you're not going to want to use that checkbox. I think that is enough though, so I will, let's do a VRS first. Get some altitude, or better yet, I'll just tell it to get me lost. Which I just saw and disappear. There it is. So get me probably high, and then I just have to slow down and set that CWS. Yeah, that's pretty close. There we go. And I can look at the alpha and beta on the upper right of the data. Try and bring those down towards 0. Got a lot of beta right now. Side slipping to the left. So you see VRS wash went up. Now, X-plane doesn't hugely reduce cyclic authority. Sometimes it does seem like it does it a little. So my collective is up. The VRS has been induced. I'm increasing collective. It's not really helping. Making it worse, which it should. Now, traditionally, you drop the collective, which would reduce the wash and push the cyclic some direction, usually forward a little. Any lateral movement would help. But another way to do it is just power pedal and right cyclic, the so-called Richard maneuver. Let's try that. And that got us out. Now, admittedly, the forward and back would have probably done it too. The left cyclic probably wouldn't have done it as much. And definitely the pedal that's not the power pedal would not have helped a whole lot. So just from the aerodynamics and thrust and all that stuff that's happening, the rotor simulation, you get a kind of crude Bouchard technique incentive, an incentive to use that technique in X-plane, but you don't lose all cyclic authority with the collective. If you yank the collective up after you start getting into your own wash and you try and push the collective forward, back, or in the direction of the power pedal, I mean, you shouldn't be getting much cyclic movement when you do that. But that fault in X-plane is the exact same fault in every other helo sim I've used that has VRS. The Dodo Sim 206 has that issue. It's very easy to get out of the VRS just with any cyclic input. Enemy engaged has that issue. And so what that happens is, I mean, you can get into VRS, but you can get out real easily. That nifty GlovePIE script I worked out, though, for Comanche Gold, you can combine it with the Dodo Sim 206 for FSX, with X-plane, with enemy engaged. And again, those scripts are dumb, so they don't know the lateral velocities going on in the sim. It's just based on the virtual cyclic, the PPJoy virtual cyclic, but once you get into a VRS, getting out of it is pretty damn amazing. I mean, it is hard, and you have to do certain things. You have to lower the collective before doing like a pitch forward, or you have to do a proper sort of Fouchard technique. And so it's too easy to get into VRS with that GlovePIE script, but the getting out of it seems to be pretty bang on. So but you end up getting into VRS really frequently. It's funny when it happens and you have the sim like enemy engaged, or the Dodo sim FSX 206, or X-plane 10 or 11, and the in-sim VRS triggers. If you trigger it in the sim, you're certainly going to also trigger it in the PPJoy script that I did for Comanche Gold. So if I use that Comanche Gold script on the others, and I assume it would also be the same for Black Shark, the constraints to get into it, the thresholds, are very broad, obviously, for the script, but for the sims, it's narrower. So if you do get into it in the sim, you're definitely going to cause it in the script. And when they both happen at the same time like that, it's like, wow, that's pretty neat. You start descending really rapidly. But of course, the GlovePIE script, the way it's doing it is by dropping the virtual collective. So in some respects, like in X-plane, dropping the collective when you're in a VRS will actually get you out of the VRS. So it works best in Comanche Gold where I intended it. And there might be a way for me to get it working in other, like Longbow 2, maybe I could get it working in Longbow 2. The issue with Longbow 2 is Longbow 2 already has its own rate command attitude hold system. They originally put in a trimmer button, and then they appear to have taken it out in one of the betas of Longbow 1, and they never put it back in. So there's a trimmer button, but it trims in a continuous roll or continuous pitch. I guess you could force trim a continuous rearward pitch, so you're going backwards, and then that would require you to constantly push the stick forward, but that just seems kind of stupid. I don't think anyone should do that. If you have Longbow Anthology though, Longbow 2, just Longbow 2, and you want to add pedals, definitely check out White Knight. I think some of the Thrustmaster or CH pedals, there's a way to combine them within the little utility that CH or Thrustmaster have. So, like a few lucky people over the years have been able to have pedals in Longbow 2. But wow, makes a great game even better. It just feels really cool with pedals in that. Well, I'm going to go into that Planemaker and check the settings I have for the Gazelle so I can explain to you what I did. And I already have it loaded up actually. So it's under Expert. VTOL or helo controls. And then you go to rotors. So I have on the bottom left, bottom right, where it says tail rotor with speed, top down, auto tail rotor with speed start, 50 knots, auto tail rotor with speed stop, 150 knots, auto tail rotor with speed add, -15 degrees, Tail rotor increase with full collective 15 degrees. So it's doing 15 degrees in one direction and then 15 degrees in the other for the tail rotor pitch to do some sort of tail mixing based on velocity, or indicated airspeed, and collective position. That seemed like a pretty good balance in combination with the mild arc stab and yaw damp constraints that I think were added by the original aircraft author for the Gazelle. So it seemed like a good combination. I tried adjusting the other, I think it's under control geometry or engine, I think it's under engine, standard and engine specs, where you have control over the gear ratios or something. But every time I tweaked that, it just made stuff worse, so I put that back to where the author had it originally. And if you want the Tiger that I tweaked those art stabs, you can just go on to the listing for that on xplane.org, and in the discussion forum I posted somewhere, and I think I have the uploaded ACF, and you just drop in my ACF in there. And if you want to, you can back up your original, or if you just save over, it's fine. Because if you want to go back to the original Tiger, all you have to do is turn off art stab, because it didn't have any art stab to begin with. So, Silver Surfer Comanche. If Silver Surfer had a helicopter, this would be it. Thank you for joining me in beautiful Seattle. I'm going to stop this video.